It's that special time of the year where Colorado head coach Deion Sanders is linked to every job imaginable. Let's talk about it.
You are Locked On Buffs, your daily podcast on the Colorado Buffaloes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Buffs. I am your host, Kevin Borba. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel has an offer you don't want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. Pick a bet, put down $5, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love FanDuel because it makes watching football even more exciting when you got a little something right on the action. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com or to download the FanDuel app today and get started. We're also brought to you by the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day for free and available wherever you get your podcast. So make sure to like, subscribe, and follow so that way you don't miss out on a moment of the coverage. The Buffs are back in action this week. So, of course, I'll have former Buff Jordan Dominic hopping on the show. We'll be diving into the Utah game and all that jazz. But first, we have to talk about these ongoing rumors, this ongoing notion that Deion Sanders is a candidate for the Florida and or Florida State job when it opens up. We're going to talk about that, why I don't think he's a fit for either. We're going to talk about why I think Utah is a very beatable team and why they were, again, overrated this offseason. And then lastly, I'll just dive into what has been happening around the Big 12. But first, let's start with Florida and Florida State. So if you guys didn't know, Florida head coach Billy Napier was shown the door. Ironically, they waited to fire him after a win, which, I mean, I think they have a bye this week. So I get that aspect. But even then, it's like, if you knew you were going to do it and it's not really to save any money, just do it when the team's not riding high. So that way they're not like, oh, this sucks. Like, do it when the team is like struggling and going through some stuff. So that way it's like, yeah, we're going to play for our interim coach. But either way, Florida's going to Florida when it comes to stuff like that. There's a reason they're looking for their fifth head coach since Urban Meyer. Anyway, as soon as the job was opened, I knew it was going to happen, and it did happen. People around the web or net, Dan Orlovsky included at ESPN, which he's the one I'm going to talk about the most, or his take is people are going to link Deion Sanders to Florida, right? He's a Florida guy. He's got the appeal. He likes the Florida recruits. He wants to recruit specifically in the southeastern region of the United States. And so everyone automatically assumes that he's the perfect fit for those Florida schools. And I'm here to tell you he's not, right? Is Florida an enticing job to most? I would assume so, right? Like their budget is their estimated value for their athletic department, for the football program is 1.08 billion, right? You're in Florida. It's a hotbed. You're in the SEC. You get the patch, right? You get everything, all the perks. You get state-of-the-art stuff. You're a Jordan brand school. You get all the swag, all the merch, the location, blah, 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 this, and the other. Here's the problem, and here's one of the three key reasons why Florida is not the place for Deion Sanders, right? Florida is a very, very high-pressure job, and when they don't see results right away, they're going to turn on you, right? Billy Napier was the best thing since sliced bread at one point, right? Everyone was like, oh my gosh, we got this guy from Louisiana Raging Cajuns and Louisiana Lafayette at the time, and we love him. He's going to revolutionize the offense. He's going to recruit because they fired Dan Mullen, who, mind you, had a but a really strong record at Florida during his tenure there. And they fired him because he didn't recruit well enough, right? They were like, you know what? Dan Mullen isn't recruiting at a level that will help us contend for titles. Now it's, okay, Billy Napier recruits, but he doesn't coach at a level that's good enough to win titles, right? So during his tenure at Florida, Dan Mullen went 10-3, 11-2, 8-4, 5-6, and they fired him that year. He's now at UNLV where he's 6-1, I believe, or 6-2, 6-1. So Dan Mullen obviously never had issues with coaching. It was just a matter of, you know what, he just didn't do what Florida wanted. So for starters, Deion Sanders isn't a fit simply because Florida's going to turn on him quickly because he's not going to operate under their guidelines, right? Florida has very involved boosters where Colorado, I think they have a very passionate fan base. They have a very passionate group of boosters. That being said, Deion Sanders can basically do whatever he wants, right? And there's very few, if any, programs around the country who are going to commit to letting a coach basically, I don't know, block out the media so his son can run a YouTube channel centered around practices. There's not going to be many programs around the country that let a coach film multiple documentaries at one time, like Amazon, Netflix, or whatever it is. Like they're in there, right? Colorado is getting unheralded coverage. There's not many programs who are going to let Deion Sanders just build his own brand and do his own thing and like not recruit. Like we'll get to that in a little bit. Not do things the way they want, right? Deion Sanders isn't someone where a booster goes, hey, Coach Prime, I really think you should do this. That's not going to fly. So it's not going to fly for either party. So Deion Sanders isn't a fit for that reason. Recruiting. I talked about it. Florida fired Dan Mullen essentially because he wasn't recruiting well enough. That's the gist. Deion Sanders can recruit, and I'm sure if he was in Florida, I'm sure recruiting would be a lot easier for him. He'd just be like, hey, come to Florida. Like but he doesn't do the trips. He doesn't make the visits. He doesn't do the at-home stuff. He, as of right now, prides himself on building his roster through the transfer portal. We saw it work last year. It's mixed results this year, right? But say he does take the Florida job, he'd get DJ Lagway, and obviously he would have to revamp that offense a little bit, but he'd have the weapons. But Deion Sanders doesn't recruit to their liking. He isn't going to be told what to do by the administration. And then lastly, Deion Sanders has shown time and time again he is committed to Colorado, right? There has been so many reasons for him to leave Colorado, and reasons, quote unquote reasons. He could have gone to the NFL to try to coach his son. He could have left college football, or he could have left last year, right? When his son and Travis Hunter left. He could have left coaching in general when he had cancer. He could have left coaching in general again or what was it, 2 weeks ago when he had another blood clot. Deion Sanders has shown time and time again he's committed to Colorado. Colorado has shown that they believe in him. They've shown that they will invest in him, right? They made him the highest paid coach in the Big 12, and he's, I think, top 5 highest paid coaches in college football. So it's not going to work out at Florida. And then the Florida State of it all, which Mike Norvell's not fired, but count your days, Mr. Norvell, because the only thing that's saving Mike Norvell's job is that he's really expensive, and the fact that Florida State knows in its heart of hearts that it's not as an attractive job as Florida. So going head to head and like going after the same candidates, it'd really be a blow to the people in Tallahassee if they went after the same person and lost out, right? You don't want that image, and you don't want your coach being like, you don't want your head coach being the guy who's like, we got you because we couldn't get this person, right? Either way, Florida State disrespected Deion Sanders the first time around, and I don't want to say he holds a grudge, but he keeps receipts, right? If the Florida State job opens up, Deion Sanders, I would be shocked if he shows any interest in it, right? He doesn't claim them as his alma mater. He was interested the first time around, and they overlooked him for Mike Norvell, and it worked out for one season, but Norvell has sort of face planted, and now he's going to be an expensive fire. And I don't think Deion Sanders and Florida State are on the best of terms, and I don't really know if he'd be the guy that'd be like, you know what, let me just turn the other cheek and forget what you did to me, right? I don't think that's going to happen. So I don't think Deion Sanders is going to leave for Florida or Florida State. I hate that people throw his name out there for these bigger jobs because they're like, you know what? He needs to be at a bigger program, right? The one thing that hurt college football, and it's the reason that we have a 12-team playoff, or at least one of them, was there wasn't enough parity in college football. Remember that? Do you remember when everyone complained like, oh, Alabama and Clemson are playing in the championship every year. The sport sucks because everyone's just watching them, or we're just waiting for the inevitable of them playing for a title, right? That was the complaint. So then, and other teams wanted to compete for a playoff and all that. That's also a factor. But one of the less talked about factors of expanding the playoff was giving people more access because people wanted different teams. They wanted different storylines. They didn't want their season to be over in week 1. Like Notre Dame last year, you lose to Northern Illinois week 1, guess what? Your season's over. You may as well call it because you're done, right? That's how it was. And so people wanted parity. Well, now, and it's Paul Feinbaum, it's Stephen A. Smith, Dan Orlovsky in this situation. It's like we're so used to wanting LeBron to go to the Lakers or Slice Pops. I don't know how old you are, but you must be very young because Florida won a title in my lifetime, and I'm only 26. So that's some of the comment section said Florida hasn't done anything. I mean, Florida's a decent program, but either way, back to what I was saying. It's one of those things where we always are like, we're programmed in sports to be like, oh my gosh, like we want LeBron to the Lakers. We want Patrick Mahomes to that. We want Tyreek Hill to go back to the Chiefs. We want Patrick Mahomes. Oh, you're okay. I'm older than you. Oh my gosh, that's disgusting. He's born in 05. I'm a 99 baby. Well, I feel old. I feel like an unk right now. So shout out to you, Slice Pops. But people in sports have this disease of like wanting all the big names to go to the big markets. And it's like, why can't we allow smaller markets or non-traditional programs to be good? Do we have that disease where it's like, if you're not at Bama, Texas, Ohio State, you should be. That should be where you aspire to go. I'm not saying you shouldn't aspire to chase great things, but Deion Sanders realistically can get this program to a place where it can contend, right? Texas Tech is doing it right now. Arizona State did it last year. It's possible. You don't have to be a program that is a quote unquote blue blood to have success in college football. So I hate that it's always like, get this guy out of this job immediately because it's not a blue blood job. So I don't think Deion Sanders is leaving Colorado for Florida or Florida State. And I'm kind of disappointed. And I think it's a toxic mindset that we have where it's like, you know what? We need the big names at the big programs. Why can't we have other programs be big? Riddle me that. When we come back, I'm going to talk about why I think Colorado can beat Utah this upcoming week. This episode of Locked On Buffs is brought to you by our sponsors over at Quo. One of the tools that helps make a huge difference for your business is Quo, formerly OpenTable. It's the same, or Open Phone, excuse me. It's the same great business phone system you've heard me talk about before, just with a new name. And here's why it matters. Every missed call is money left on the table. Every customer conversation counts. You need a phone system that keeps you connected 24/7. Quo is the number one business phone system that streamlines customer communications. It works right through an app on your phone or computer, so no more carrying two phones or relying on a landline. I love Quo, formerly known as Open Phone. It lets your team share one number and collaborate on calls and texts. See why over 90,000 businesses trust Quo, formerly Open Phone. Get started free and get 20% off your first 6 months at quo.com/lockedoncollege. That's QUO.com/lockedoncollege. And if you got an existing number with another service, Quo will port them over at no extra charge. Quo, no missed calls, no missed customers. Welcome back to Locked On Buffs. Appreciate you guys for tuning in every single day. Make me your first listen of the day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Make sure to like, subscribe, and follow. Let's talk Utah. As I said, we wanted to root for if you're a Colorado fan. Utah lost to BYU, so now Utah and Colorado are not that far apart in the Big 12 standings. The Big 12 race, you could probably say this every year, is a giant hodgepodge. And so if Colorado beats Utah, they would have the same record. They'd have the tiebreaker. And Colorado is sort of stuck in this random group of like teams that are kind of on the cusp of contending, but not really. But let's talk about the Utah game. They lose 24-21. And quite frankly, BYU, I feel like, had control of that game for a large chunk. I don't know. It was 14-10 in the fourth, and then BYU made it 17-14, 24-14. Bear Bachmeier continues to do what he does best, which is not make mistakes for a true freshman, it seems impossible. But Utah, they couldn't really stop committing penalties, right? There were 12 penalties for 77 yards. They got the run game going, 226 yards, but BYU wasn't efficient on third down. They were 3 of 12. But when it comes down to it, Utah turned the ball over twice, and I feel like that was sort of the difference, right? I think when you win or lose a turnover battle, it's as simple as that, right? Bear Bachmeier was threw for 229 yards while throwing for a touchdown and ran for another one, and then LJ Martin added 122 yards on the ground. It's just one of those things where you did everything right, except you didn't win the game. That's unfortunately what it comes down to. And he threw an interception that really turned into points. And that was the killer, right? So if Colorado can force Devin Dampier to make mistakes, they can win this game. And Colorado's shown at times that they can make turnover worthy plays. It's just a matter of recovering the fumble or forcing that interception, not getting called for a PI, right? But Tafik Byard came up with a huge interception this past week, and we've seen fumbles hit the ground. And Utah, I think this started coming into the season like they did last year. They were really being gassed up as like this team that's like, oh, they're going to be so great, right? They play Texas Tech. That was their first true test of the season. They lose by 24, right? They beat up on UCLA, Cal Poly, Wyoming, and it's like, oh, great, Utah's awesome again. They're going to win the Big 12. Then they beat up on West Virginia, and then they get a Arizona State team without Sam Levitt. They had Jeff Sims, who's quite literally terrible. And I think Jeff Sims is actually my age. So there's that. Jeff Sims is pretty old for a college quarterback. And then they play a BYU team, which was basically their second true test of the season, and they lose. And so I feel like this Utah team coming in as 14.5-point favorites, I mean, that doesn't feel right. I know on paper, Utah looks like the better team, but they haven't gotten much out of their running backs, right? Devin Dampier leads the team in rushing. I'm not impressed by the receivers by any means. And I will say their pass rush is good, but Colorado's offensive line is the best it's been in years. So I don't really know where the clear advantage for Utah is outside of if they can get their run game going, that'll make life hard on Colorado. But that centers around Devin Dampier. And if Devin Dampier, if you make it a game where he has to throw, I don't really know if he's going to beat you with his arm, right? Devin Dampier is simply not, I don't want to say he's not that guy because he's pretty good. But in games that aren't, well, just like against quality opponents, which I would consider Texas Tech and BYU and even Arizona State. Texas Tech, he had 2 picks, no touchdowns. Arizona State, 7 of 12 for 104 yards. He did all of his damage on the ground, which this is where Colorado needs to be scared of, is like, hey, prevent him from doing his damage on the ground, because if you make him beat you through the air, it won't happen. He will force throws up. If your coverage is tight and he feels panicky in the pocket and you won't allow him to run, he will just huck that thing up. We saw it against Texas Tech. He threw some of the ugliest interceptions I've seen. And then against BYU, completed 55% of his passes, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception, was sacked 3 times, and they limited him rushing 15 for 64. I mean, it's still pretty good, but by his standards, he could do a lot better. So I think if you're Colorado, you have 2 weeks to prepare, right? And you're pretty much preparing for like, hey, how do we stop Devin Dampier? And you simply just have to, I mean, not simply, because I don't want to make it seem like it's easy, but you have to keep him in the pocket. You have to make him beat you with his arm, because he has yet to prove that he could consistently beat teams with his arms. And so if Colorado is able to upset Utah this week, I mean, you're looking at a brand new life on the season, right? I called the win over Iowa State sort of a reset win, a bounce back win, and a turn things around win. And if they win against Utah, you have a very manageable schedule down the stretch, right? You have Arizona, who's 4-3, very solid team, but not a contender. West Virginia, who's pretty, I would say they're the worst team in the Big 12. Arizona State's going to be tough, and that's probably going to be your toughest remaining game. And then you have Kansas State. So if you win this game, you're looking at 3 out of your last 4 being really winnable. And all of a sudden, say you're 4-4 and you win, you're sitting at 7-5, which, I mean, it's not terrible considering where you're at right now. And if all things go right, you go 8-4, right? So if you're Colorado, this Utah game can really set the tone for the rest of the season. When we come back, we're going to talk about what else happened around the Big 12. This episode of Locked on Buffs is brought to you by our sponsors over at Monarch. Let's be honest, most of us can't even name all of our financial accounts, let alone what they're worth between 401k, savings, and investments. It's easy to lose track, and that means leaving money on the table. That's why I started using Monarch, an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or your phone. It helped me organize my accounts, track my spending, and get a better handle on my investments. Don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarch.com Let me try that again. That's monarch.com, code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year. Welcome back to Locked on Buffs. Appreciate you guys for tuning in. Make me your first listen of the day. Free and available over your podcast. Make sure to like, subscribe if you haven't already. Let's try to get that number up to 8,000 by the end of the month, if you will. Let's try it. The Buffs did not play this week, so I would say they won the bye week, right? They get healthy, prepare. Hopefully they win. Let's look around what happened in the Big 12 and how the standings look now. Like I said already, BYU takes down Utah, so Utah falls out of the top 25, and they also fall in the Big 12 standings. Arizona State hands Texas Tech its first loss of the season, which makes the Big 12 standings a little muddy because now there's like 17 teams, not really 17, but probably like 5 to 6 teams fighting for that second spot behind BYU. Houston continues to be on fire. I mean, they look good. They beat Arizona. TCU kind of blew out Baylor, then kind of didn't, but they kind of dominated the whole time until they didn't. It was a weird game, but nonetheless, TCU won. and then UCF beat the brakes off of Virginia. So here's how the standings look from best to worst. As I sort through this, let's see. You got BYU at 1, Cincinnati 2, the 2 undefeated teams. And then, omission, Cincinnati and BYU, the clear-cut 1 and 2 teams. After that, everyone's fighting for that second spot. So everyone's preying on Cincinnati or BYU's downfall. Then you have ASU 3, Texas Tech 4, Houston 5, Iowa State 6, and TCU 7, Baylor 8, Kansas State 9, Utah 10, Kansas 11. That chunk of teams, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 teams are all sitting at 2 and 2 in conference play. So there's going to be a lot of things that can happen there. Arizona 1 and 3, UCF 1 and 3, Colorado 1 and 3, and then West Virginia and Oklahoma State are both 0 and 4 in Big 12 play. So Big 12 is very much up for grabs. Honestly, if you're Colorado and you win out, there is a weird way where you're in the mix, right? All you can do is control what you can control. Control your controllables, if you will. So if you're Colorado, do what you got to do to handle business, unlike last year, which is kind of what ended their hopes of the playoff and the Big 12 championship when you lose to Kansas. But do what you can, and things around you want to unfold. This conference has always been wild, and I expect it to be wild until the very end. So I appreciate you guys for tuning in, making me your first listen of the day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Make sure to like, subscribe, and follow. And I'll see all of you guys tomorrow morning. This has been Locked on Buffs.